we doing, everyone? I'm Victoria Wiltshire, and this is Songtradr Happy Hour. Hello to our audience. Thanks for joining us once again. As usual, feel free to use the chat windows throughout the session. The last 20 minutes will be our interactive Q&A portion where you get to put our panelists in the hot seat. We will try to get through as many of your questions as we can, as usual, and so sorry if we don't get to yours. But don't forget to enter them into the Q&A window on Zoom or via chat on Facebook. And now we are going to meet our panelists. They are ready for you. Our first guest began playing piano at 5 and was writing songs by the grand age of 12. The former elementary school teacher was soon producing music for OWN's hit show Greenleaf, BET's Boomerang, Carl Weber's The Family Business on BET+, and the upcoming P-Valley on Starz. He's collaborated with Timbaland on Step Up High Water Season 3. He has over 75 credits as film composer, music producer and arranger, and has produced Grammy-nominated Emmy, NAACP Image and Peabody Award-winning soundtracks. And this guy does all from his childhood home in Marietta, Georgia. Please welcome Matthew Head. Hi, Matthew.
Hello.
Our next guest has written worldwide hits for such artists as New Kids on the Block, New Politics, and the endlessly interesting Paloma Faith. If you've watched shows like America's Got Talent, The X Factor, Disney's Casey Undercover, and Raven's Home, or seen ads for Sony, Samsung, Palmolive, Kellogg's, and many more, including Huawei's theme song, Dream It Possible, I think this guy's very busy, you've probably heard his work. The last couple of years have been dedicated to many trips to Tokyo, probably not so much at the moment, culminating in multiple major releases in the Asian market. He is the recipient of 14 BMI Crystal Awards. Love to love the one and only Andy Love. Hi, Andy.
Hey, everyone.
Love to love you, baby. No, I got to do that. As an award-winning writer, director, and producer, this next guy is a triple threat in the world of film, TV, and new media. His contributions to NBC's TV series Heroes won an interactive media programming Emmy for the Heroes digital experience. Writing credits include Free of Eden, starring our favourite To Serve with Love, Sidney Poitier, Way Past Cool, and currently he is developing a limited series, The James Baldwin Project, based on the civil rights activist and best-selling author whose work was dedicated to opening minds and changing lives. He is a winner of the prestigious Fox Writers Intensive, a WGA Writers Access Project winner, and as producer-director for 2 hit music video shows, Fox's Pump It Up and TBS's Night Tracks. He was an early influencer and acting coach for Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem. He's a graduate of Harvard Uni and UCLA. We're so pleased to have with us Yul Case. Hi, Yul.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you to all of you for being here with us. Our topic is pitching yourself to the industry. So, Matthew, how about we start with you? How do you prepare for a pitch?
Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me real well? Good? Cool. How do I prepare for a pitch? That's a very, that's a tough question. I don't know how I prepare for a pitch. Usually, depending on the project, I usually do a little studying behind the director or producer I'm working with. I like to kind of know what they've worked on, what they've done before, and I usually want to come up with ideas of how I can sell myself a little bit quicker and easier. I'm very personable. I like to build my relationships. I like to build my business relationship off of friendly relationships. So I like to kind of dive in to see what director or producer, what they liked, what they used to like, what they worked on before, and do all that homework and then collect my musical thoughts and musical ideas and literally pitch myself, not my music. And I want to kind of go off of personality-wise more so. I want you to like me first before I even pitch my music to you. I think the music is kind of like the cherry on top. So I literally try to just kind of build a friendship or rapport that you can trust me to take on the project that you're working on, that we're all working on. As making music as a composer, it's so competitive. There's a lot of composers and musicians. So my goal is for you to like me personally, and build that trust. So first off is definitely doing my homework on that, and then finding music that fits exactly what is going on with the project. I like to ask for scripts if I can get a script. If I can't get a script, I get a really good synopsis scenario of what it is, and try to find music that fits that. And hopefully that will kind of happen naturally through conversation, and go from there. And usually that kind of helps me a little bit as far as my personality-wise talking, and then that develops from there.
I love it. So key element here is that you're building a relationship, aren't you? It's not just a one-off. How about you, Andy? Does that sound similar to something that you would do?
Yeah, I was actually going to say word for word what Matthew just said. So he's stolen all of my ideas already. No, but seriously, it is about striking rapport, maybe on something that's different to music as you walk in. Something, whatever, a funny story that happened to you on the way over, or something relatable. I would say, like Matthew did, do some homework, research the A&R. Where have they been before? Where did they move from? Why did they move? Just to kind of, gauge their tastes. I'd say do a bit of research. Also research the relevant artists that they're looking after. That's so important, because you don't want to go in and play something that is not relevant. There's no point you being in the meeting if you're playing something that has no chance of being signed or looked at or getting interest. Also, when you're getting your songs together on a songwriter kind of perspective, is whatever you have, I would suggest getting all your songs, cutting them in half, and then cutting them in half again. And then you'll get the real true champions of what you want to play. Because I've been guilty of that. When I was younger, I played way too many songs. And I'm bored myself. So imagine if the A&R is looking at me listening to all of my stuff, and it's tedious. They've only got limited time. So yeah, research, be relevant, and play less. That's my preparation 3 things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And for you, you're not a songwriter or a composer. However, I think that a lot of the skills that you accumulate for pitching really do convey across multiple industries. And so for you as a writer, when you're pitching, is that the kind of prep that you would do?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that it's as a writer, director, or even as a producer pitching projects, like a lot of the projects right now I'm working on are very soundtrack heavy. And so that really comes with the territory. It's like, well, what is the mood that we're going to even want to affect if we're talking about said particular project? And that happens whether we're trying to actually pitch ourselves or pitch myself, the project, and they're all kind of wrapped up in one. And sometimes it's also in concert with what's the mood or the music going to sound like. So I do the research, and I've been guilty in the past, early in my career, of not doing enough research. And that doesn't mean that you have to then, have done the research and really pick out every little thing. It's just giving you the broader sum so that you can walk into a room open and be open to ideas. And I like to kind of think of it as a creative store box. Like, oh, I could reach from here or there. These are all kind of arrows in the quiver, so that you can just be open to receiving and coming, what I call is coming to the sandbox to play. And I think creative individuals really respond to that.
I love it. Are you going to bring your little bucket and your spade for the sandbox?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, talking about the quiver and having multiple arrows in there, how many backup ideas would you recommend that our community would have when they're walking into a room? Because they may not hit it on the first pitch that they have, right? Matthew, do you want to take this one? What do you do?
Oh, so I always go in that I would probably won't hit it the first time. I never walk in thinking like this is, is this going to happen? So I already have anxiety, or I've already put in my head that they're not going to like what I give them. And so really what I do, I trust my own instinct musically. So the first thing that a composer told me a long time ago is trust your gut. He's like, you're doing this for a reason. They called you for a reason. So if they called you or you are in the room, you're there for a reason. So I like to play music that I like to play, that I think is good for me. Like, if I'm confident about the music I'm playing, or especially working with producers and directors, if I'm sending my show reel or my composer reel, every piece of music that you hear is something that I personally like, that I feel like I can connect to. It makes me feel good, because if I can stand behind something that I don't question, then if you don't like it, it's on you. I'm like, well, hey, you don't like it, I like it. So you never serve food that you wouldn't eat yourself. So it's the same way with music. So I walk in just literally thinking, they're not going to like it. And I always try to surprise myself. Like, oh, they like that. That's cool. And like I said, I always go back to my personality, and I'll always go back to the relationship, because I let them know I want to build the trust with them that even though you may not hear it here, I can do whatever you need me to do. I have the team and the network and the ability to get whatever is done across. So,
Passion, confidence. But when do we know that we've probably given them too many ideas? I don't know. Andy, do you want to jump in on that one?
No, I agree with everything Matthew said. Like, it's also location based, because I remember having A&R meets in London, and they'll tell you straight up, no, I'm not feeling that. No, that's shit. No, I'm not feeling that. And then when I came here 7 years ago to LA, I came back after every meeting, the first time I met a lot of these A&Rs, and I said to my wife, we're going to be millionaires. Every meeting was the best meeting I've ever had. They love everything I've done. And then no one called me back. It's like, it really is. It's like that. And so all around the world, you've got different mindsets and different people who, I think they just don't like to say the word no in where I live in Los Angeles, because they don't want to offend you or whatever. But you got to take it all with a pinch of salt. And as Matthew said, if you believe in that piece of music, then if they don't like it, then it's on them. And you can walk away thinking, it's all right, someone else is going to like it, because the whole game is subjective at the end of the day. You're not right, they're not right. You just might connect with them on a musical level that day. If not, someone else will connect with you on another day. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I love that point of understanding the culture as well, which probably takes time. And I know that you've done so much work with the Asian territories. How different is it there as well then, as opposed to UK and US?
It's a good point. It's very different. There's very much more of a hierarchy, where I did a lot, mainly in Japan and Korea. So somehow I've managed to, I've kind of found my lane, which I was missing for a while. And I stumbled across it and loved it. And I love K-pop, and I just went with it. But that lane, there's a lot of hierarchy, a lot of decision makers, but they'll let you know at each stage how the decision making is going. So you're a lot more informed than you are here. You've got nothing until you suddenly got something overnight. And, they don't give you, this might be a cut. It's like, it's either happening or it's not happening. So I think the information flows better in the Asian markets, and it's a lot more respectful to the songwriters. Whereas a lot of my career, I felt, and I still do to some extent, like creators or songwriters are literally the bottom of the food chain. We never get told anything. We never get a pat on the back. I'm not looking for praise or anything. It's just the way it is. And you have to have the toughest skin, out of most other jobs. So information is flows better, I would say, and it's more helpful to the writer. where, me doing K-pop and J-pop. Yeah, and that's kind of why I not gave up, but I took my foot off the gas for the Western market, because it's a slog, and there's so many people doing it, and it's so hard, and you get no information, and yeah, and I could go on, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do. It is a shame if they're at the bottom of the food chain, because that's where all the inspiration is, and that's what actually connects with people's minds and hearts, and that's what actually gets the world turning. So, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to give you a pat on the back right now, and maybe your skin's so thick that you can't feel it. I don't know.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm used to it. Trust me, every day.
Yeah, well, okay, well, that's it. That's a good point, actually, is just actually to get that skin thicker, because it's not personal, right?
No, never.
Yeah, is that what you found as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's really different for the different markets, just like Andy said. It's the same in film and television. I've worked for a long time both in Hollywood, and then the last few years, or over the years, I kept finding myself working more and more internationally. So I was working with an Academy Award-winning Japanese director, and so I did a couple of projects with Japan, and then my company Behind the Billboards, we do a lot of international co-production. So we are working a lot with UK, Europe. My James Baldwin project is a French, UK, US co-production. We have other things now in Ukraine. We have things in New Zealand. I mean, kind of seeding projects in different places, because that's our come from. But it's different each market. And and just like to what Andy was speaking about, sometimes you think, oh, this is wonderful, this is going wonderfully, and then you hear silence, and it's just, in Los Angeles, everybody, in Hollywood, just in general, it's like, love you, love you, love you, and then
next,
maybe they don't really love you, right? Or they just or they're just on to the next thing, and you're really like, what? Whereas if you had that, if somebody was telling you that from the French perspective or something, nobody's saying I love you, love you, love you in France, unless they love you. Right. So it's and so you have to learn to adjust, and also let some of it roll off your back. And sometimes it's, how do you play? Like, you have to be adaptable about how you come to play. And that's why I always say, like, your original question was like, do you come with more than one idea? Usually I'm coming in with a key idea, but if it's a general, then you're coming in. I always come in with two, like the main one, the second one, and then what I call the leave behind one. As you're walking out the door, it's the, oh, you know what I really wanted, it's that one. And it's very funny that is how I ended up getting a deal at FX. It was literally the idea that they kept pressing and saying, what do you want to do? And I was trying to fit in their box. It wasn't really working at first. And then they said, well, no, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, what I really want to do is make a Kung Fu version of King Lear set in Oakland in the 1970s is really what I want to do. Something that was completely outlandish. And they're like, oh, that was, I was walking out the door, because that's really what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to return to the Bay and that sound. And I was thinking in my mind, for some reason, I was thinking about Tower of Power and those horn, I was like, and it's funny, you never know where it's gonna come from. So be willing to play, and always have something else in there, and don't be afraid to have the thing. Sometimes I use it as a thing that, like, I know you're not gonna like this, but since you're not clicking with the other things or rejecting elsewhere, it's almost an FU. You know, it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you what really is going on inside my my head, and sometimes that's where people want to play. So
right, yeah, I love that. And to Matthew's point before, it's sticking to what connects with you. You know, what do you truly want to do, and that's probably going to resonate a lot more strong. And if you end up getting the job, you're going to end up enjoying yourself so much more than trotting something out because you just wanted the job, right?
Yeah. And we've all tried to do the things that we think that they want, and and honestly, I'm guilty of doing that over and over, you know, because you're like, oh, well, this is such and such. I won't name certain companies, but, you know, you're like, oh, they probably want it like, and then, you know, there's somebody else who loves that. I say it doesn't matter what the industry is. People are like, oh, it's a commercial, or this is or that. I'm like, you don't understand. There's somebody who is living for that. So if you can't find the passion behind it and bring that passion to it, then it's probably not really going to happen, because people aren't just handing things out. Or at least they're not to me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the flip side of that, if they don't like what you're presenting, don't start getting defensive and arguing with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, Matthew, you are nodding quite vigorously, so I'm assuming that you're agreeing with what you're saying, yeah?
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. On my end as a composer, we are, the one thing I like that he says that, you know, the industry is the industry. Like, and I remember always thinking to myself, when they call a composer, we're like the last on the list to get the film, the script, the edit. And sometimes as composers, we're supposed to fix what actors didn't do and what the edit didn't do. So as composers, we're supposed to kind of make it work musically to make it all make sense. And I remember working on certain projects and trying to just do what a composer would do. You know, let's add these kind of strings and let's spend all this kind of money to make this feel bigger than what it is. And I remember having things being shot down. No, this is not it. No, this is not it. No, this is not it. And the deadline is creeping up as I have, as I'm presenting and working. And then I have to go back to my personal inner gut of why I make music and why I do what I do. And literally just trust what I do and strip myself down from the whole, the ego and the title of what I am, and just literally make music to what I feel and my emotion, and service the show, service the scene, service the moment. And once I do that, all those crazy instruments that we're working on and all those crazy musical ideas really turn into like 3 chords and a piano. And I have to remember that I am the culture. Like, they want what I'm giving, and they don't make music. They could, they would do it themselves. So by them asking me to make the music, I have to remember and be confident that I am the culture and I am dictating musically what they're trying to say. And so once I started doing that, and I do it on every project, and I don't know about you, every project I do that. I start off very big, and then all of a sudden I just, let me narrow this down to something very simple. And what Andy said, thick skin is like literally like we're supposed to have it. Like I tell my wife, you know, at home, I say, hey, I get a lot of no's, a lot at home. I mean, I get a lot of no's at my job. Can you say yes today? Can I get some yeses? You know, because I get a lot of no. I get no's every time I open up my computer and we go to the studio. I'm getting a no from a musician. I'm getting a no from an engineer. I'm getting a no from producers. I'm getting a no from directors. I'm getting a no from my agent. It's no's from everywhere. Can I just get a yes at home? So that thick skin is definitely needed in this industry, because it's very, you're going to get no. And so servicing the project and respecting yourself enough to know that you are good enough and they called you for a reason will kind of shut those no's down or make them not as hurtful. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where I try to understand that they're saying no because it's not it yet. it's not there yet. They're not saying no to me. They're saying no to what they're hearing. So my job is to convince them, and I actually sell myself enough to say, trust me, this is a yes. And so that's how it works.
We're saying yes to you right now.
Thank you.
To all of that.
Yes.
Okay.
10 minutes, in about an hour, I'm going to get no from my team. Someone's going to tell me no.
I'm just going to spam your inbox with yeses, all right, after this.
That's what I need. I need some yeses.
Andy, so let's say that you're in the room with, the label or the management. How much would you consider when you're pitching a song, for instance, for an artist on their label? Would you consider other factors like what the budget is, and do we have the luxury of being able to record in a real studio and bring in session musicians, or outside factors, or does the artist actually want to write the song with you? How much does that play in your head when you're actually doing this kind of pitching?
Well, I'd have definitely a different story to what Matthew'd have, because I'm very like niche and very like in the box. So basically I have a blank page every day, and I don't have to fill it. That's a bad terminology, but I want to fill it, and I want to make the best. I often say to my wife, there's no pressure on me, but I have to wake up every day and be every single other person in the world I want to do every single day. And over time, it does give you a bit of pressure when you sort of think too much about it, because it's a big thing to have on your shoulders. When you choose this creative role, it just keeps on going, and you have to roll with it. So I don't want to think about it too much. I'm back to your point. I'm in the box. So I mean, as in terms of live musicians, I mean, for K-pop and J-pop, they will re-record what I do. So I have to do all the vocals, the vocal arrangements, and then they'll replicate my arrangements elsewhere. So, again, it's location based. But a lot of the times now the A&Rs come, they from Japan and Korea, they love a trip to LA. So a lot of them come out and they stay by me. They come to the studio and kind of say, no, the artist wouldn't do it this way, or maybe they would do that. And sometimes there's a translator with them as well. So it's not direct communication, which makes it fun. I think Matthew would probably be better at answering that, because I as I say, I'm do things in a very niche way. So maybe Matthew has some ideas.
Sure.
Yeah. As far as on my projects, as far as on the film side, I always assume that they don't have the budget for the stuff I would want to do as a composer. So I just automatically I work from in the box, and then I kind of veer out the box. So with especially with television, we don't have time. I mean, we want to have time, but there is never time to do a lot of the big orchestra vibe thing. So we do have a smaller window. So a lot of things is in the box. I have a small ensemble of musicians that I can turn to, and I can have them there immediately to do some things for me. Guitar players, drummers, string players. And then I will pitch my idea of what I want to do, what I think, we could do. And I will say, hey, is there any opportunity for me to record this kind of vibe? So I literally start in the box, and then once they hear and once the cue gets approved, then I say, hey, so now that you love what I just did in the box, I can make it better if I had a live string player, or I can make it better if I had, we can get some drummers, or I can get some vocals on there. But usually a lot of times I've noticed once I record outside the box or using all these musicians, they want what I did, the demo version of what I did. Mm-hmm. So I've actually kind of worked backwards sometimes, where I've done some things and they loved it, and I go re-record it and trying to present the cue, the new enhanced cue, and they're like, what about the first one that you said? And I was like, oh, that was, I used a loop on that. That's not where That's not what I wanted to do. So I always assume that they don't have a budget, even though there are bigger projects. And I just try to keep the schedule and do as much as I can in the box. And then once everything gets approved, or once I feel like they trust me enough, then I can start grabbing musicians and saying, hey, let's go do this. And I have those conversations very early in the process, so the director knows, or the production company knows that, hey, I love to use live musicians. I love live players. I love to use live, singers and songwriters. So just let you know, I have a team of people I can work with, and then we go from there. So it varies from project to project. Television is like a 10-day, sometimes 7 days, sometimes 3-day turnaround. So I just have to go. Movies, more feature films or something like that, is more of a, we have 3 or 4 months to kind of do things, but we're always waiting for someone to tell us something. That's the thing about on my end as a composer. I have to go through a director, a couple producers, and production and showrunner. I have to have 8 yeses before I can move on. So it's just one of those things where we have to kind of constantly working and constantly having things ready when it's time.
Yeah, so it's almost like the pitching doesn't stop until the job's actually handed over, right? You have to be on.
It doesn't stop till I see it on TV.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop till I hear it. As a matter of fact, I was working on the show, and I had to tell, when I work with people, musicians, they get real excited and they, want to talk about what they're working on. I'm like, hey, you can't talk about it until you actually hear it on television. I've been paid for projects and none of my music was on television, or it didn't make the final mix. I've worked on projects where they're on the mixing stage and mixing the television show right then, and I'm getting a phone call to change some music at the last minute. So it's just one of those things where until I actually see it and hear it on television, we're still working.
Yeah, and so let's go to Yule. How about appearance? I know it's not something that you're always thinking about as artists or writers. We're always thinking about, okay, how do I make my song better? How many rewrites do I need to do before I'm ready to pitch? But appearance counts as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we are in that business, and it's really funny because I've worn different hats. And when I was directing music videos, that's a different hat than if you're going in as the writer of a serious drama. And
metaphorically speaking, right?
Yeah, metaphorically speaking. And I was kind of laughing because several years ago, and as I said, I'm not sure if it's exactly the same now, but like I had even taught my kids to be able to, if we go to the mall or someplace here in LA or the West Side Pavilion, they can pick out who's the writer and who's the agent and who's the whatever, just because, you're like, oh, you want to go to a place and see what, all the people in the suits, and they're young, they're like, oh, those are all the agents, or the screenwriters in TV used to have, there was a certain uniform, and I didn't really get that, it was, and I also just didn't want to play always inside that box. But honestly, sometimes if you want to get the job, if you're walking in looking like a suit, and you're walking and they're expecting the writer to walk in with like, those low top Converse or whatever, or Pumas and the jeans and this slubby white shirt or something, they're like, oh, that's not, people have this perception. And so I do think that, know your audience is really the best thing to say with that is, you want to come in and be yourself, but you also don't want to commit any just automatic party fouls. If Matthew comes in and we're, doing something that's going to be all strings and classical score, he might present himself slightly different than maybe not, right? But you want, you know, you want to present in a way that you are either capable of everything, or that you're not, you know, I'm not, you know, just putting yourself in a box. You want the most amount of possibility. And I had early on when I lived in Venice, my first company was in Venice for a long time, and we produced a lot of indie feature films. And so we were dealing with composers, and my roommate was a composer. And it was really interesting to be able to have that. You know, I'm still trying to get back to being able to play like that, in that you can only do that when you have no money or tons of money, you know, because everything in between is, you know, but when you have no money, you really do have, if you're early in your career, you really do have the freedom to do the things on the level that you are going to work the rest of your career to get to that same creative state to achieve again. And that might mean I would give a script early, or sometimes even a scene, and say, you know, hey, what is this, you know, read this and just tell me what this evokes for you, you know. And my roommate at the time could bang something out on the piano that it made him think, and I could actually hand that over to my star at the time, who was Sidney Poitier, and say like, oh, this is what I think that theme would sound like, or this is what I'm trying to go after, you know, this is what I'm trying to write to sound like that, how that makes you feel. And that,
Right.
as I think, is really where I would love to play again with, especially with people in music. You know, I follow some composers and stuff, and I'm like, wow, what they did there in that movie, it's so interesting. And how do we get to that creative sandbox that we can play together again like that? And that's veering off from the appearance of it all, but you want to, I think, throw yourself in that arena so that you can get to do the things, you know. And sometimes things don't cost what everybody thinks they cost. I've done indie films where the composer said, yeah, strings would be really so much better here. He's like, you know, I have a good relationship with that orchestra in Prague, and I can get you 55 people and we can do it by a link or something. And just because you want to, you know, that's the sound we wanted. And it's like, you know, we all have those things in our toolbox and access to favors we know. And so if you can be playing in projects that are really giving you creativity, things will appear.
That's what you want, right? That's the dream job. They're saying, hey, go ahead, go and hire whatever orchestra you want, because we want that sound. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yes.
Maybe confession time now. Do any of you want to share a story where you've had a pitch that went disastrously wrong? Now you're thinking.
Most of mine went wrong anyway. I just like music is so subjective, but there's been a couple of times. I mean, I've never done any massive fails. In fact, I didn't, but my co-writer did. It was only like beginning of this year. We walked in for this big meeting at Netflix. We'd done a few songs for this TV show. Just sat down with the head of production, and David sorry, no names, David. He reached over and smashed this cup of hot coffee all over a beautiful dress. And it was like the first thing that we just sat down ready for this power meeting. We were like hyped up. We had everything locked down. That was pretty good. But no, I haven't personally done anything really bad. What have you guys been up to?
Okay.
I haven't done anything personally bad, but I can tell where my mistakes were happening beforehand. Sometimes I'm either I talk too much or I'm too quiet, and I keep going back to this personality thing. I was working on a show where I guess I was, you know, I'm a lane guy. I like to stay in my lane and kind of, you know, I'm on the road. I'm gonna stay on this road. Call me when you need me, kind of thing. So I was working on the show as a composer and working on it real well, and everything was going well. And they started asking me questions, and they couldn't speak musically to me. They didn't know how to speak music. They know how to, they can do everything else, but it was like the director and showrunner couldn't really give out what they were trying to say musically. And so our communication was just terrible. Like, it was just, I was trying to get there, you know, and I'm in Atlanta. So I'm in Atlanta, it's in LA. So we're already doing Skype meetings or Zoom meetings, and we're doing emails, and the communication just wasn't landing. And I remember having our spotting sessions, and they just stopped talking to me. Like, and I guess they felt like, you're not involved, and we're not involved. So just send us a whole bunch of music, and we'll just place it in the film, or we'll place it on the show. And it came back for another season. Unfortunately, I didn't get the job. And I remember asking some people that I knew within the production, and they were like, "Oh, they thought you were afraid of each other. Like, no one wanted, you weren't a part of the clique. You weren't in the loop." And that was like my first like, oh shit moment, where if I was just speak up and just trust my gut and trust my feelings and just be normal instead of the composer, I could have, you know, salvaged a little bit of that relationship and just kind of, you know, kept it cool, because business is to me, in my personal opinion, business is personal. And so if you don't like me, or you don't think I like you, then we're not going to continue to work. And so as great as the music had made a sound and how good it was working, I lost their trust. And so once I lost their trust with not communicating with them the proper way, or even trying to communicate, or even understanding why we weren't communicating, I let the ego get in front of me, and their ego got in front of them, and the relationship did not go where we could have gone. So yeah, I guess that's like more of a shoulda, coulda, woulda moment for me, I guess. But I've never had an issue with pitching where it was like, oh, you know. But I guess more within the project, it was like, that's not what we're looking for. Have a good day type thing.
Right, but the egos had a great conversation, right?
Yeah.
So here's another yes for you. I'm going to just continue. You've got a story, right?
Yeah, because so much of what I do is pitching over the years. I've mentally tried to suppress some of those epic fails.
Oh, what have I done to you? I'm surfacing it.
And some of them, you know, one I remember, I was pitching something. This is early in my career, and I was on the Sony lot pitching to a big name exec. And it was hot in that room, and it was late in the afternoon, and I was pitching, and the person I knew when I came in, he was tired, and I just saw him. I'm going on, I'm kind of reaching, and I just saw him start to nod, you know, off. And I was like, and I was like, oh my gosh, did somebody just fall asleep on my pitch, right? and what that told me was, A, you know, sometimes you really gotta sell it more. And also B, I decided after that, you know, to the point where sometimes my agents would say, like, why won't you take meetings at such and such time? I'm very strict about what times I'm on my peak and what times I will, and they'll say like, hey, so-and-so really wants to meet with you. They can meet tomorrow at 4. And in the cycle of how things go in Hollywood, I'm like, no, I'm not available then. And because at least in the development side of things, you kind of know after a while when the meetings take place, or if it's after lunch, that person's not, you know, they're not going to be so good, or, you know, I'm not great first thing in the morning. For me, my sweet spot, I'd rather be 11 is my favorite meeting time or something. And
yeah,
so,
you don't always get that choice though, do you?
Don't always get that choice.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to also remind yourself to take your ego out of it, because sometimes you'll be presented times that I'll say, oh, these are complete. Can I curse in here? You know, well, these are shit times.
Yeah,
right?
Curse here though, I think, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's what they think of me or something. And then I was like, all right, sometimes you just have to take yourself out of it. And a couple years ago, I still think about it. And this was for a huge show that everybody knows. And they called me in, and I was quite excited to get that meeting with the showrunners. And I knew about another, they had more than one show, or one of the other people in the room, they had more than one show on the air, that I had heard through some other kind of intel that show was getting canceled. And they were like, oh, we're doing this. And I think I off the cuff said something like, oh, is that still on, or is that still, and because I knew it wasn't coming back. And and I didn't, it doomed me with that person, not the people I was there to meet, but the person in the corner. I was like, oh my gosh, I just, for lack of a better word, I just shit all over his baby. I mean, I was like,
that's a horrible visual, by the way.
Yeah. That's, but I was like, oh my gosh, I said the child was ugly, and I wasn't meaning to say that. It was just intel, and so I felt terrible, and so did, I didn't end up on that. Yeah.
Right. Well, you'll never do that again. And so, right. We have to get to questions very soon, but I have some rapid fire points here that I want you guys to say yay or nay. All right, so arrive a few minutes early. Don't be late for your meetings. Yes?
Yes.
And don't be horrendously early, and sit there sweating for an hour, right?
Yeah.
But don't be late, because these meetings actually are hard to line up. All right, listen as well as speak.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
You can get more jobs. You can get more jobs by listening correctly than you can by speaking correctly.
Good point.
I shall do better. Be concise when you speak. Don't ramble, even if you're nervous. I know that's tough, but
that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's dependent on your personality, and like there was a period where I had quite a lot of anxiety when I used to go to these meetings, and it would only flare up in this situation when it was me versus this person, this big name A&R or whatever, and it just kind of got to me for a while. I did manage to overcome it, but everyone deals, and then I found myself rambling and weird foot movements and all kinds of crazy shit, and it's a hard one to beat, and I'm sure many people can empathize with that, because you feel this pressure that isn't there. It's only in your head, and that it's all about mind games. So if you can, back to Matthew's point, just be you, and and the rest will come. And if they don't like you and you're being you, then it's on them. So yeah.
Okay, good. Well, time will help that, I think, and practice. Okay, the other one, don't share a huge amount of personal information about yourself when you get in the meeting. Like, they don't need to know that your alarm didn't go off and you missed the bus, and, the night before you had a curry that didn't agree with you, and right? Watch for cues. Yeah, go on, Matthew.
To me, that's a yes or no. It's in some aspects of it, in my end of it as a composer, because my relationship with the producer or director or especially the showrunner is very, very important. Like, we got to be really cool, because they're trusting me with their project as musically inclined, and I am. So I don't give them too many crazy details, but I would definitely I would find out what's similar to them, that's similar to me, and play off of that. I did that recently on a show where the showrunner and I clicked because we liked the same restaurant. And it was like, we just went there and we had dinner there. I said, let's meet at our favorite restaurant. And then that became a really cool conversation starter. And then musically, I would just throw in what I like, and then she trusted me enough to do that. So not to get deeply personal, but definitely share a little bit of yourself so they can see that you are a person and not a machine, so to speak.
Well said. And then when you go in, you say, where do you eat? And take it from there, right?
Right.
thank them for their time, regardless of whether or not they've accepted your work, and be nice to everyone. The person out front, the person who answers your call, someone who brought you the water, right?
Yep.
Be respectful, because when you're not, word gets back, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I think it's time for us to do some questions, because I can see a few burning here. Actually, let me see. You guys ready? So I'm the only one with a real drink here, right?
No, you're not. No, you're not. I got a real drink, so don't worry about it.
Yes. Very nice. Okay. So one from Zoom, from Anonymous. What if you cannot get the producer to return phone calls or emails? It's a good question, right? Because follow-up.
Oh. In my opinion, what I've dealt with, expect that. I've always walked the line of they're going to say no. I usually, like I said, from the very, very beginning, is just try to pitch myself personally. But expect not for them not to call you back, and expect them not to do that. So that develop that thick skin. It literally happens immediately after the meeting, and just say, the one thing I like to do, I like to take everything I'm working on, every project, every meeting I take, every phone call is practice for the next one. So I always use it as that's a good practice. It's a good, I use football as my analogy for everything. I love football, but that's a really good scrimmage, until the next scrimmage. And so expect it. Don't be upset about it. That producer is talking to a lot of people too, and it's not personal. So walk in thinking, you may not call me back. So I have this one time to show you who I am. And if you call me back, you call me back. That's from my end of it. So.
Yeah. Andy, you'll?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between being pushy and too respectful. I definitely err on the too respectful. My wife always tells me I should be hustling, I should be calling them back, following up. And I've always believed that if my music's there and I know they've heard it and I know I've left them a USB drive or whatever, if they're not calling me back, they don't like it, and it's as simple as that. And if they've listened to it in the meeting, then they've listened to it. And if they're not jumping up and down, then they're not. So I've always kind of shied away, but I think the perfect thing is to be in the middle of definitely follow up, definitely be respectful with your follow up. And then once that follow up's completed, don't follow up again. Don't keep on and hassling, and because then it gets a bit ugly.
Yeah. You anything to add there, or is it we've covered it?
Yeah, I think they've covered it. When they don't, now I'm at a place where I'm like, they're not calling back. If they wanted to, they would. So I'm kind of like, life's too short.
Yeah.
There's somebody else who's going to think that what you're doing is amazing. And what Matthew said about the rhino skin, that's what I call it, is rhino skin. It is really true. I mean, sometimes before a meeting, I'll literally have to stand in the mirror and just saying wonderful things to myself over and over. Because your self-esteem is so down.
You are needed. You are loved.
And I'm, I call it the kind of willful act of disillusion. If I just,
Yeah, it's right after you pick up that rhino skin at the local, Walmart or something, right?
Yes.
Okay, so from TC Ralph, what agencies are more open to new composers, and do you recommend kicking in doors, so to speak?
No. I have a rule of thumb when it comes to agencies and agents. Let them find you. I want someone to want me. I want someone to like what I'm doing and understand what I'm trying to do. I want someone to represent my journey, represent me. Agents, I want the relationship with my agent. I want the you're calling me to make sure I am okay, not musically. So I always tell, I just had a conversation with another composer the other day, and he said the same thing. He's like, I've been calling all these agents. I'm like, why? I was like, they're going to call you. Once you get that project, you're going to get a phone call from an agent or someone saying, hey, I heard your work. I saw it here. Once your name starts to circulate, they will come. But I will always, and that's how, my relationship with my agent is. We met each other through a mutual friend. It was a very mutual, hey, Matt, this is so-and-so. Hey, so-and-so, this is Matt. It was very, simple, and our conversation was, let me see if I like what you do. Let's see what we can do together. And that's how it starts. It's not one of those things where you grab an agent off the shelf and hope you go with it. It's really a relationship. So, because you're working together. And so I always tell composers, let them find you. Keep working your music, keep pitching your stuff, build your own relationships, because it actually helps your agency or your agent. If you have relationships already built, if you have a catalog of things already done or people you already talked to, it's easy for me to call my agent and say, hey, I got so-and-so over here, let's check it out. And he can run with it, and he can have, or he or she can have a back door. So it's just really a relationship thing. So do not, throw yourself out there like, I need an agent. Just work on your craft of music. You're a musician, so work on that, and work on projects that benefit that, and then agents will come for sure. I mean, I'm a testimony for that. They will come.
But if you haven't got your credits, Matt, how does someone make enough noise to attract like an agent? This is a different sphere to me. So I'm just asking an honest question. How does someone who hasn't got contacts, who doesn't know what shows to be working on, how do they attract attention?
Yeah, well, you don't work on shows, you work on everything. You work on my first project. I tell people all the time, my IMDb, I have all these credits on my IMDb, but half of them are free. I worked on every project that came across my door. I worked with independent directors. The beautiful thing about working for free or working for a very low budget or whatever, you're building that relationship with that person. My first film I ever worked on, I did it for free. It was I want to work, let's have a good time. And that person now has a series on BET that he calls me for. And that was a 15-year relationship. So, and not to say that, now my agent talks to him. I don't talk to him no more. Now my agent talks to his production company. So I always tell people, you continue to work as a composer. You find an independent director that needs their movie scored. You go to small production companies that need their, that needs music for their movies. You go to websites and agencies, like small ad agencies that need jingles. You do stuff like Songtradr. You do a whole bunch of that stuff, and you just kind of build. You have to really crawl. It's a crawl situation. It's not like you're not going to get Superman tomorrow. Like, you're going to get that indie film that no one's going to watch out of Missouri. And you just keep working, and all of a sudden, those things will line up. Social media is huge for me. Everything I do, I post. Everything I work on, I post. I have a website. You can get a website for free. Every time I do something, I post it and I say I'm doing it, and I continue to do that, and you continue to build, and all of a sudden you'll get that phone call from someone saying, hey, we have this project. We would love to have you involved. And literally the relationship with someone that you do not think is working on something, those are the most important ones. Those are the ones that you have to create and have to, nourish, because that director that has no credits, no money, but has the vision will have a film with you in mind. So I just say work. Do not worry about the money. Do not worry about the namesake. You literally put your head down and say, I am working on this. I am building my resume. I am building practice. I am working on getting better as a composer. And that happens, especially in this business. I mean, it's really that. It really is to me.
Film schools. Yeah.
I just did, even now with all the stuff I've done, I still do stuff for free. Like I just did a USC thesis film, right? A young lady called me, has a beautiful film. She called me randomly. I met her through a friend of a friend. And she said, I would love to have you on this project. And I was like, well, great. And she was like, I don't have any money and you've done all this stuff. I said, nope, send it to me. Let's work. Because she is going to, she's at USC and she's a thesis film. I know for a fact she's not going to stop making movies. So that USC thesis film that we did in 2019, when 2025 or 2029, when she gets her budget, who she's going to call? The composer that helped her 10 years ago. And that's how you build. So I'll still get these, run-off short films. Hey, yeah, I do it. And knock it out because I want to build a relationship, because that person is going to take that film and go somewhere else with it. And all of a sudden, who did the music for that? It comes back around. So film schools, anything that has anything musically, you should want to jump on as quick as possible as a composer. So,
very cool. Can I add to that? If you trust the process, often the projects will find you, right? They speak to you and they choose you, right?
Yeah, they always come. They will.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. Great tips in there. Okay, so we have time for maybe one or two more. Jacqueline Cohen-Beatty, do you recommend sending a snippet of music rather than the full songs? And Jacqueline's joined us today from Facebook. So snippet of music rather than the full songs. That's the question.
Do we have a context in terms of like, is it what kind of like for scoring, film scoring, TV, or?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask.
As a song, no, never. You need the verse to chorus at least. But I'm sure these guys will have different answers.
Yeah, Matthew, Gil.
Usually they will want to you send the whole cue, and usually cues are 45 seconds to a minute. So you want to send a couple of cues that display your work. I don't usually send snippets unless it's in most of my music, with composing, we're dealing with small segments of musical moments. So I do work on songs sometimes, and I'm just like Andy, you send the whole song from verse to chorus. Sometimes you may throw the bridge in there just so they can understand, like, we have a change. But yeah, I always try to send with my cues, the whole cue, usually.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. From the old world of songwriting, when I was pitching, you send them the whole song. They'll listen to however much they want to. And then if they're interested, they'll want to hear the whole song, right?
Yeah.
So
And who wants to hear, what if you're enjoying that song, and then you only get to, you're like, what? Well, where's the rest of it? And
yeah, you don't want to be a roadblock for the person who's listening. No. Give them everything, right? Yeah. Okay, I think we've got time. You guys got time for one more? Should we try? Okay. This one was somewhat answered, but let's see if anyone wants to expand on this. This is from Anonymous. Success builds upon success. How can the unknown songwriter pitch a song or get someone to listen?
Good song is good song. If somebody, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Really, at a certain point, and maybe I'm wrong, but a good song is.
Yeah, good music is good music. That's just really what it is. I just like to go back to this whole passion and understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Are you doing it to make money? Are you doing? There's so much. I'm 38, so I'm in the internet phase of my. It's so much. It's so much you can do. Put your music out to anybody. So when you're pitching yourself or when you're putting your music out, use the tools that are in front of you. Use SoundCloud, use Songtradr, use Facebook, use MySpace, use Twitter. MySpace is old. Use Instagram, use all this stuff that is free to advertise it. I just don't, waiting for someone to, I just don't go along. I don't agree with waiting on someone to hear you. I'm all about hear me, because a good song's a good song. You know, they're gonna like it, and you're gonna know immediately. I'm just real big on just put everything out until someone tells you to stop putting it out.
What about if you don't know, just for the people who are starting off, what about if you don't know who to send it to? I mean, sure, you can put it out but into the ether, but there's like, you know, there's so much noise. How do you cut through the noise? How does it get to the end goal? You know, like for someone starting out, it's tough, man. Like, how do you, there's no blueprint, is there?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I tell my wife this a lot. We're playing a lottery every day. So when I get up, I'm like going to the gas station and doing a scratch off. If you walk in thinking that, to me personally, then that thick skin will automatically start to come off. You walk in not thinking negative, but thinking that I am shooting the shot. I am hoping that it will go in. And then once you start developing your shot and you start developing what you're doing, all of a sudden that shot starts to go in. So, you know, trying to get to Clive Davis or get to
I'm practicing as well because I really want to go in.
Trying to get to Clive Davis or get to an Oprah Winfrey is you're shooting a shot from half court. But I don't want to get to Oprah. I want to get to a person in front of Oprah or a person who can connect me to Oprah. So I think a lot of times we're trying to have a hit record where I just want to write songs, you know. My first goal was to, you know, as a music producer, at first was making beats and getting a hit record, and to actually be a part of the record industry. But then all of a sudden, my instrumentals got into film, and I started composing. So it's you never know where your music's gonna go. You always, when you make it, you create it for your personal beliefs and how you feel, and for your creative moments, and you let it go. And hopefully, the universe, God, whoever you believe, will take it and throw it where it needs to be. If you come
and your lane will become apparent over time, because I think it's really important for everyone to understand that they should have a lane. Like, being generic is so tough. You got to find your niche, and that takes time as well. That takes a lot of failure to find your lane. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I agree. And we have that amazing tool called social media. So build your audience, and you don't have to pay for that. Build your audience so that you get some groundswell, and speak to your audience and find out what they like and what they don't like about what you're doing. Be open, be interactive. Perfect. So look, I think that's all we have time for, unfortunately. There's some amazing things that you guys shared. We're very, very happy that you joined us. Matthew, Andy, you're all amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been an immense pleasure. Thank you also to our audience. We hope that you found our happy hour valuable and enjoyable. You'll be able to view the full session on YouTube tomorrow. Look out for a link in the webinar follow-up email or the post on our social channels. Our next session is in 2 weeks, and it's an up-close and personal conversation with the esteemed film director John Turtletop. Of course, you know him. Known for such worldwide hits as Cool Runnings, the National Treasure movies, While You Were Sleeping, Instinct, and most recently the one with that awful, I was going to say, 3D shark, the Meg. We'll be discussing how he approaches soundtrack for his films. Look out for details. Stay safe and be kind to each other as always. See you in 2 weeks for our next happy hour. Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.